Good evening, everyone. Today we have with us Darpana Kapoor. The way the session will work is I'll give a brief introduction of Darpana, which will be followed by a moderated Q&A, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Thank you so much, Darpana, for being here. And we hope to have a very, very engaging session with you.
Thank you, Satyajit.
Darpana holds a bachelor's degree in artistry and appreciation from the Faculty of Fine Arts, MS University, Baroda. With an experience of about a decade and a half in artists management and art business, she has been associated with many and eminent art galleries in India and abroad. She currently works with a leading auction house based in India. Welcome, Darpana, and thank you so much for being here. I'll dive straight into it. So what are the risks that are associated with art investment, and how does the art market compare to other investment options in terms of volatility?
I'll keep it very short and precise. And I will try and weigh out the pros and cons when it comes to art investment. We need to remember that art as an investment is a long-term investment. Again, it depends on a person how he or she wants to move forward. But it works better if it is taken as a long-term investment. So I'm talking about the risk. Each and every investment that we do involves a certain kind of risk. Art being slightly different, it involves more risk, not to discourage anyone, but it is a sort of an asset that one cannot redeem and sell on a daily basis, like with our shares, our stocks, SIPs, etc. Gold, we see it changing, evolving. We make profit almost every day. That's where I said that art is a long-term investment.
Sure.
And when people want to venture out investing in art, there are a few, I wouldn't say disadvantages, but sometimes there are deterrents as well, because there is a lack of information. So it was always advisable if one can get an art advisor or a financial expert who specializes in art. There is no harm taking guidance. When I say lack of information, there is information available online, but what we see is mostly what has happened in auctions. The numbers are of auction results or certain things that have been sold online. Being a part of the business, we certainly know that there are things being sold privately. We do not have those numbers in place. So that's where the lack of knowledge comes in. But yes, in the past 2-3 years, or say in the past 5 years, auctions have given beautiful results. Indian art has it's crossed its boundaries, it's gone out of our country. We see a lot of collectorship coming, not only from India, but also from overseas. So the interest that Indian art has created in the past 5 years is very, very different. So the other risk, or when I say lack of knowledge that is involved, is not just confined to what we find online, but people are not aware of, tax obligations, insurance. There are counterfeit, I do not want to use the word fake, but there are counterfeit works that are available. So that's where the understanding of where to buy from, how to look up an artwork. So that's where, people like us, art advisors, etc., kind of can lend an expertise. So these are the problems mostly the people face, and especially like if you're just starting out and you look up numbers online, or you have bought a piece of art and you look for a comparable online and it has been appraised at an X amount. So appraisals are also not very structured. The same artwork or a similar, I wouldn't say same, but a similar artwork that you own may not be appraised at the same price. So these are the problems that we perpetually hear from people as well. And that kind of holds back people from investing in art. And another problem that people still face is that they find white cube spaces, whether it's a gallery space or a display area of an auction house, very, very intimidating. So it is difficult to people who have the pockets to initiate them into art investment because they don't want to come out. But the pandemic kind of changed patterns where people were sitting at home. There was lots happening online. So it has changed patterns with the way auctions have set world records, the way Sotheby's, Saffron Art have kind of given out a lot of world records. There was Gaitonde during the pandemic that set a world record. There was a Manjeet Bawa. Then most recently with Saffron, it was Amrita Shergill. So there's a lot happening online. And I think the pandemic has kind of given impetus to get a new audience, and it has created an interest in art more. So talking of lack of information we've done, then there are other risks involved as well. So if the economy is hit, there's inflation that is on, it does hit art as well. So it goes up and down, the rise and fall kind of does bother art and your investment in art. If the market is at risk, the art that you have bought is also at risk. Also, there's something called a credit risk, wherein when you have other investments in place, you have a property, you have your shares, you have gold, you can put it out as a collateral. But if you're in need of funds, you can put it out as a collateral or mortgage it, but you can't do that with art. And then comes the currency risk. So up and down in the currency gets the value of your art also up and down. So now these were mostly the disadvantages that a person faces. There are advantages as well. So let's look at the positive side also. So if you are an art lover, it is always advisable to buy what draws you. Of course, there are people to advise you, but also listen to your mind, your heart, and put your money into something that pulls you, that draws you, because you have to live with it. And the more you live with it, and later on when you're planning to sell it, it reaps more profits. And as I mentioned earlier, that art is a long-term investment. So it's better to live with a piece of art at least for 3 to 10 years and then look at profits. Art can be treated as heirlooms as well. So that is also a positive side to it. So generations after generations can keep the piece, but it all depends on how you have stored it. So we do meet people who've had artworks for 40 years, 50 years, 80 years in the family. So they have turned into heirlooms. And art is tangible. So you are living with an asset which you can see every day, touch, feel, enjoy it, wherein other assets are not tangible. They're either in your bank locker or somewhere sitting in a digital platform, and you are playing with it. So that ways, art should be, if you love something, invest into it and move forward. Other aspects can also be dealt by technical people. And hopefully, gradually, things will get structured in that or in those spheres as well.
Thank you for that very, very cohesive answer. It sums up all the factors around art as a potential investment. But Darpana, let me ask a follow-up question to this. How do you value, or what are the kind of factors that go in terms of, valuing a work of art, or that could influence the value? Like you mentioned, if there is some kind of an inflation that has a potential effect on the value of the work as well. But in terms of valuation of a work, what are the factors that go behind it?
I think moving forward, we will elaborate on this as well, because we'll speak in detail about, provenances and authenticity, etc. So I will keep this very, very, very brief here. So when we're valuing, when we're looking at a value of an artwork, we definitely look at the history. We look at historical results, or we make it kind of a little bit of we make a data pack and look at comparables, look at the uniqueness of the artwork. Maybe it was a one-off work that the artist did in his lifetime. Maybe the artist was not as prolific and maybe produced only a couple of hundred works in his entire lifetime. So all that also matters. Then exhibited history, published, everything matters. So that's where we step in, we analyze everything, we research everything, and then we put a value to the artwork.
And which are the artists or art genres that are considered strong investment in the art market?
So right now, our Indian moderns are going very, very strong. And amongst the moderns, of course, artists like Hussain, Raza, Gaitonde, Tayyab Mehta, Amrita Shergill, Souza, Ram Kumar are going very, very strong. And in the recent past, looking at the trends, there are other artists who are getting their due, and they're moving forward. Their market is looking up. Artists like Bakre, Gade, Zarina, also Ganesh Pine and Haloi, their market is getting very, very strong. And in the contemporary artists, of course, we have Subodh Gupta, we have Bharti Kher, Anju Dodia, Atul Dodia, Rashid Rana, and of course Anish Kapoor, where we get very few works of Anish's available in India. So the market is really looking up for these artists. And if you see the recent auction results, they have done very well. Also, not to forget, Vibha Galhotra is also doing very, very well. So these are mostly either mid-career or senior contemporary artists. Unfortunately, the emerging talent still has to, we have to wait and watch with them till the time the career trajectory goes somewhere, and then accordingly, then they can be placed specially in auction. I'm basing all my answers on the auction results and auction catalogs that are coming out. Yeah.
Sure. And how do you identify like artworks or artists with a potential for a potential long-term investment or appreciation? Because you mentioned of a lot of names. So like based on, so if you have a young collector, or if you have a new collector essentially who's wanting to park in their money in the arts, so what are the ways in which they can identify artists or works with a potential long-term?
See, when you're collecting, it's always nice to have first collect established names and then add on some emerging talent. It is very important to have a budget in mind always. And sometimes pockets are small. That doesn't mean that you can't buy a master artist. So my advice to clients at that time is that buy a smaller work to start with of a significant known artist and then move forward. And definitely start with the established names and then keep adding on the emerging artists. Once you know you're done with it, then add the emerging artists. Art collecting is a journey. So it has to start. You may make some mistakes. So that is not a problem. It is better to make a mistake and then keep moving forward.
Sure. And what are the criteria do you use to evaluate quality and investment potential of artworks? And a lot of terms, as you also mentioned, terms like provenance, condition, historical significance, all of these terms also pop up quite often. So could you take us through that, please?
So provenance literally means the record of ownership. So every buyer, whether he or she is buying from an auction house, a dealer, or a gallery, and if you're buying a modern artist, and most of our moderns are not alive, it is very important. Do not hesitate in asking for the provenance details. You need to have a full trail in place from where it started, where it changed hands, where all it went. Maybe the original buyer had acquired it directly from the artist. Then it went to a gallery. Maybe a gallerist acquired it, and then that gallerist sold it to a private collector again, and that collector further placed it in an auction. And while the it was with the gallery, it was a part of an exhibition, and also it was published in a catalog. So everything has to be tracked down. It sounds very vague sometimes to people. How does exhibition history or publication history matter to a work? We always say that it adds on to the provenance. The work is published, it kind of gives you more satisfaction to move forward with it. Also, there are very minute details that one should also consider. Always check the reverse of the work. There's a lot happening there as well. It's not just the front and maybe a signature there. That is just not enough. So when you see the reverso, you will see inscriptions. You can see messages written to by the artist to someone. There can be an artist's label, handwritten. There were times when they used to actually handwrite labels. There could be an old gallery label, like even which is ripped off. There would be one old Lalit Kala label, something for NGMA, where they may have sent an artwork to a Biennale in the 60s. There could be something from Dhumimal, like 60 years ago, they were the only ones. So all these little things have to be checked. And, as you know that I work for an auction house, we really get into these nitty-gritties. And we make sure that it is all recorded, documented, and presented if when required for the client, because we can only pull out pertinent details for the catalog. And then we just keep this handy, and also works keep coming back into rotation, into an auction. Somebody's bought it today, might want to sell it, as I said, keeps it as a long-term investment that comes back to us after 5 years or 8 years. So all this information kind of helps us. So this is one aspect of, provenance, exhibition history, published history. Also, sometimes we have to check, how unique is the work to determine the value of the work. So taking, for example, like though Hussain was a very prolific artist, but when it came to something like Banaras, he produced very, very few works, maybe just 4 or 5, and he just left it where it is. So Ram Kumar and Hussain in the late 50s and 60s started their travels together to Banaras, wherein Ram Kumar continued with his engagement with Banaras, but Hussain being Hussain had kind of dropped it. So if I get hold of a canvas or a work on paper, which Hussain did for Banaras or with Banaras in it, it kind of makes it very unique from his horses. So that uniqueness, that kind of research one has to put into, you have to put it in so that you know what you are doing, how you're valuing the work. Also talking, this is one kind of uniqueness. Also talking of works which usually artists produce in multiples. Essentially printmaking has works which are produced in multiples. There are sculptures that are produced in multiples. So if it's a unique work, it's just if it's just a one-off work. Supposing I would take example of Zarina, who was essentially a printmaker, but did produce sculptural works as well. And in her later period, she did collages, which were unique. They were one-offs. So the pricing, the value, the estimates kind of differ there. So those are two aspects when I say the work is unique. And I've already spoken about published and exhibited. So I think that's about it. And obviously, historical significance is always important when we are researching and we are finding exhibition history. There is historical data available online. So all that kind of matters and gives us the advantage or a base to kind of value an artwork at a certain cost.
So how do you so because again there are so many factors, and as you also mentioned that um, if an artist is also quite prolific, there are a lot of then it also becomes a challenge to identify certain unique pieces or certain unique trajectories within the practice. Another question, and again we spoke of this very very briefly, I think before the talk began. How does one verify the authenticity of artworks, especially when it comes to artists who are no more? And what are the best practices for ensuring legitimacy? As you said, it's always important to look at the verso, because that is where most of the exciting stuff
Yeah,
lies.
there would be exciting stuff there, which most people ignore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, should I start?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, provenance we kind of discussed. We know what it stands for. Nobody should ever hesitate in asking for it. This is very important because 40 years ago or 30 years ago, nobody was writing authenticity certificates. And many times when we encounter these older works, it is very easily said that, oh, it was gifted by the artist. Oh, the artist would come to my house. Oh, Hussein gifted it to me. He was a regular at my house. So that's where we start looking for many more things. Exhibition and publishing is one. Then you realize that it has never come out in the public domain. So it is just not harmful to dig more and more into it. So you have to look up for the credibility of the collector. You know, some people were credible and they did associate. We didn't have that many collectors in the past. We should remember that. And they did associate themselves with art and artists in a different manner. And the engagement that the artists had with their collectors and patrons 30, 40 years ago was very different then. So we start kind of digging into more stories. We try and find older records, of course, through the collector, if they had the work hanging in the house for a long time. Do they have any pictures of the work hanging in their homes? So we try and dig out certain things. There are times that we do approach the families, the estate as it is called. So we don't rely on it always, because obviously children were not even born then to say, and now they're saying, oh, this is an authentic work of my father or my mother. But somewhere we do take advice from them. And that's one aspect of looking up the credibility of the collector, then going to the estate, and also, and of course, when I say even if they're exhibited, sometimes it has been in a seminal exhibition at National Gallery of Modern Art, but it is so difficult to find any information from there. So we have to keep looking up, keep talking, and there are certain people who call themselves authorities. Because of their knowledge and specialization, they are authorities on certain artists. Unfortunately, we do not have for many. So we kind of reach out to them and take their opinion, if at all needed. And there are enough in a certain part of India, there are enough scholars who claim themselves to be authorities, that not every letter is valid. So that one has to keep in mind. That again comes under the lack of knowledge, because people say, oh, I used to have chai with him and I know how he worked and this is how I can authenticate it, and I am Professor so and so. So it doesn't work like that. So that's where we have to find, and I mean that's where somewhere our art history kind of lacks, that we don't have many scholars. And so, yeah, that's about it. And further, when you are looking at a piece of art, we've talked about provenance, we've even delved into personal histories, um, we've looked at publishing histories. Go to an auction house website. The first one that pops up in India is Saffronat. Then comes Sotheby's and Christie's, Ask the Guru, Pandos. Look up for auction results. Most of the time, also you read the catalogs. Most of the time, the works that are sold in auctions are already well researched. They are vetted. So they become like a potential buy. So, and if you are buying from a gallery and not from an auction house, and again, it is a modern who's not alive, delve more into the history of the gallery and the gallerist, if they have ever worked with him or her, or it is just a one-off sale that they are making. So all that kind of matters. Also, it is very important when you're buying an artwork, you need to see the level of restoration gone into it. That also kind of determines the value that it will fetch. I understand that a naked eye cannot catch so much of it. We'll come back to the questions at the end, Anahita. So we can always take help from a professional restorer and see the level, because the naked eye will not tell you how much has been touched up, and somehow, craquelure in a work also kind of tells you the age. And it is fine to have a bit of craquelure, like a mild craquelure in an oil work, but always take help from a professional restorer. Ask for restoration. If they say, oh, this is restored, ask for a detailed restoration report. Do not hesitate in asking such questions at all. Oil works and paper works, the condition responds differently. So, of course, if the work belongs to another century, the deterioration is justifiable because it has aged. It belongs to the 19th century or the 20th century, it's different. But something which is about 40, 50 years old or 30 years old, it's always nice to ask for a condition report that you can see. If you see flaking, you see craquelure, you can see oil paint coming off, all that can be dealt with. It can be salvaged when it comes to canvases. And when it comes to works on paper, if the paint has faded, it can still be salvaged. There's certain kind of spots, like foxing, etc., kind of becomes a problem. So, and such things do happen in older works because at that time it was regular paper that was being used. There were no archival papers available. There was no acid-free mounts, acid-free paper available. The framing was very different. So all these things kind of have to be seen. And when you are looking at buying an authentic artwork. So that's it when it comes to checking out the legitimacy of the work.
Yeah. My last question to you, Darpana, and then we can open it up to the audience for a quick Q&A. What are the online resources that you recommend that, first-time collectors should definitely go and look at online or offline to help them sort of, like orient themselves into the arts?
There are a lot of websites. Auction house websites are the first go-to place because their profiles are updated, results are updated. There are well-written texts available about artists over there. Then there are other platforms or portals that one can go to find comparables, to know the historical data. One can go to Mutual Art, Invaluable Art, ArtNet, also Archery that operates from India has a great repository of data in terms of Indian art in the past, 5 years, I think they have very accurate data. Apart from that, if you want to learn more about art, artists, art movements, there's Critical Collective, which is run by Gayatri Sinha, that encompasses events that are happening all over the world in terms of art fairs, in terms of museum shows. Of course, you have to buy yourself a subscription, but I think it'll be worth it. Then there's Asia Art Archive, where you can access old books, both online and you can walk into the physical space in Delhi. Then we have older public libraries, such as, again, I'm talking more of Delhi, but online portals can be accessed from anywhere. So there's Lalit Kala, there are NGMA libraries, they have shops as well. Then we have the Fika reading room in Delhi, and it's always nice to subscribe and support our art magazines, which do some great work. So you can go to Marg. Marg, being one of the oldest publications, has a great art archive, and you can find a lot of older texts. Then Art India, Take on Art, and then there's something that I've recently discovered and I keep referring to as well, is it's called the Indian Art Investor. It's an independent market intelligence firm.
Okay.
So they are also ready to kind of handhold you, give you relevant data, relevant information about investment in art. And yeah, I think that's pretty much my list.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to, before we close, if you are investing in art and also collecting it, and also we are looking at it as a long-term investment, it is very important for you to also have, or you want it to fetch better results or profits later on. The storage and upkeep of artworks is very important. So these are very small things which people kind of miss out onto. So I just want to sum it up quickly by saying that your artwork should be kept out of harsh and direct sunlight. Paperwork especially should be in, I won't say darker, but again, away from direct sunlight. And if you're trying to store them and not hang them, please do not store any artworks in cupboards, because they tend to catch moisture and then molds, etc., develop on it. And if they're being stored again, and if you are stacking them up, please do not stack them with the hardware touching the other artworks. So they have to be stored face to face first and then back to back. So if the work gets damaged, then you have to restore it. You restore it, it kind of somewhere takes the value of the work down. So if we store it well, our work stays well. That's it. Thank you.
No, that's very, very important. Thank you. Thank you so much for this, Darpana. I'll just rephrase one of the questions in the chat box. Are there any instances of, artists without a art school background, so to say, becoming bigger names in the art world, or becoming dominant names in the auction world, or something of that sort?
Well, you're trying to say somebody who doesn't have formal training.
Formal training, yes. Yes.
Well, there are artists. Well, to think about it, if I go to the modern, Krishan Khanna was a banker. He never got any formal training in art. And at 97, he's the last living modern. Look at Bhupen Khapkar. He was a chartered accountant, turned into an artist. Look at Amit Ambalal. He was a successful businessman, turned into an artist. Look at, of course, Rameshwar Bhuta runs his classes at Sridharani, but the people who have gone to him and have turned into good artists, his wife Vasundhara Tiwari Bruta. Then among the younger ones that I can think is Vipeksha Gupta. He also used to go to Sridharani and was trained under Rameshwar Bhuta. I will not say that it is a sort of training, but it's not like going to an art school for 6 years. So Vipeksha is doing very well for herself. So there are certain artists. Of course, as I said, The emerging ones have still not made it into auctions. So Vipeksha kind of falls into that category. And Vasundhara Tiwari Bruta has made into auctions. Of course, Bhupen Kakkar and Krishan Khanna's story everybody knows.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I have a question for you actually, because you spoke briefly with regards to the taxation and the other aspects that affect the pricing and stuff like pricing of the work and the investment value and potential of the work. In terms of any kind of a regulatory policy or maybe some kind of a law or legalities that
Sorry, Satyajit, I'll have to ask you to repeat the question because I got distracted with Anahata's question in the chat box. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So any legalities or any policies that young collectors or new collectors should keep in mind in terms of collecting works?
Legalities and policies. Checking provenance and everything is a legality.
Okay.
If you don't have that in place, you can't buy an artwork of an artist who's not alive. When you say policies, what are you referring to?
I'm talking about any kind of government rules or regulations that I need to keep in mind before acquiring work.
That's what I said when in my first response, that tax obligations is something that is very ambiguous and most people do not know about it. They don't know about long-term capital gains. We keep meeting people and unfortunately, like, we can also help them and give them information to a certain extent because they have to go to their cost accountants for that. So we do kind of help them as much as we can because sometimes people do, they may have bought an artwork in the 70s. And now, if it is, they may have bought it for 500 rupees and today it costs 50 lakhs. So it kind of scares. I'm talking about people who are selling artworks, and I'll come to people who are buying artworks. Yeah. So that's when they kind of get very scared of how will they show long-term capital gains. That's when, and there's a process that comes in which the cost accountants suggest, and their work has to be evaluated at about what it costed 20 years ago, and then that's how it is taken because everybody is out to save taxes, whether it's the seller or the buyer. Now, when the buyer comes in, of course, he has to also consult his tax consultant because this is an asset, how much he can declare, how he can declare. Over and above, the actual price of the work, what is the GST involved? If he's buying from auctions, he's paying about 35% more. So over and above the winning bid, there's a 20% buyer's premium. Mostly, like Christie's takes 25, but in India, most auction houses take 20. So the cost of the artwork attracts 12% GST. 20% of the winning bid is the buyer's premium, and this buyer's premium attracts 18% GST because this is the service that the auction house is rendering. So these are the kind of tax implications which most people are not aware of, and they get a little bit wary also. But when they realize that they're going to buy something or what the auction house is offering is unique and is not available in the market, they kind of jump in and they proceed with bidding and even win the lot and everything, because the auction house is constantly trying to get out unseen works, something that has not been floating around in the market. So that's what we strive towards, and that's where I think that's like a USP. I hope it answers your question, Satyajit.
It does. It does. Thank you so much, Darpana, for being with us today. And thank you so much for engaging with us and sharing a lot of information with regards to collecting practices and the legalities and so on and so forth. And we hope to connect with you and we hope to engage with you a lot more in the future at Iram. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope I've been of help to people. And I'm more than happy to do this session or an elaborate session or something further to this again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Look forward. See you.
Bye-bye.